Trump's plans for the Third Temple, they're going to reshape the whole Middle East and overcome every obstacle. Wait a minute, you say, wait. Donald Trump has plans for a Third Temple? Yes, he's always had plans for one. Here is Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, talking about just that.
And today, Jennifer and I and others had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible. And a step in that process, a step in every process, is the recognition that facts and activities on the ground truly matter.
And that's what Trump's administration has to say. In an article in Israel 365 News written by a man that I would like to call a friend, Eliyahu Adam Berkowitz, he reports what Trump's election means for the Third Temple. And I quote, Rabbi Yosef Berger revealed some amazing aspects of Donald Trump's victory in the recent U.S. presidential election, most notably his potential role in building the Third Temple. As a spiritual descendant of Rome, and that's what he's calling Trump, the nation that destroyed the Second Temple, Trump has the potential to do a tikkun, fixing the sin of Rome, and returning the glory to Western society. Trump's election is a necessary element of the redemption and a sign of the Moshiach, Messiah, that he's imminent. Rabbi Berger said, this certainly does not mean that Trump will be the Messiah, but it's an indication that he will play a role in preparing the way for the arrival of Messiah. So Israel is viewing Trump as the temple builder, paving the way to the Messiah. And you know, Trump is a builder. You've heard of the Trump Tower, right? Trump Plaza. Well, how about the Trump Temple? It sounds completely sacrilegious to you and me, but probably not in Trump's mind. And there is a historical precedent for someone just like that. Not president, precedent, a historical model and example. You've heard the Second Temple called Herod's Temple, right? Herod was one of the greatest builders of the 1st century BC. The Herodium near Bethlehem, a fortified palace built on an artificial hill. Masada near the Dead Sea, the site famously associated with the Jewish zealots' last stand against the Romans in 73 AD. And of course, Herod's Temple. Herod expanded and refurbished the Second Temple in Jerusalem, transforming it into this magnificent structure. He adorned it with white and gold and precious stones, making it a wonder of the ancient world, so much so that the disciples commented on that to Jesus in Matthew 24, 1-2. He also enlarged the temple platform, creating a vast area, and most of which is still visible. You know, the Western Wall, where Jews worship today, is a remnant of this expansion. So why did Herod renovate the temple? He wasn't really Jewish. To win the praise and support of the Jewish people. Now, Trump has Herod's same zeal for building and real estate. Why will he want to help build the temple? Well, kind of for the same reasons as Herod. For bragging rights, to have constructed the greatest structure for peace in the whole world, a house of prayer for all nations, and to gain the praise and support of millions. But Trump knows you don't build a third temple without solving the Middle East conflict first. Its construction has to be connected to an overall agreement for peace, or you're just going to launch World War III. I mean, if you built the temple on the Temple Mount today, all of the Muslim world would attack you immediately. Donald Trump is going to be the 11th president in a row who's seeking to bring a solution to the so-called Israeli-Arab conflict. And he was one of the 11 already. He knows he failed to do just that in his first administration. He started the peace process by proposing the deal of the century, which is still the blueprint for all Middle East peace deals. And he recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and then relocated the U.S. embassy there. And for that, he was heralded in Israel as the next Cyrus the Great, and even had his face appear on the famous Cyrus coins. And don't think for a minute that he didn't just love that. But he knows that Cyrus accomplished something that he still hasn't. Cyrus authorized the building of the Second Temple. Trump's a competitor. He hates to lose. Trump is entering this second administration as a 4-year lame duck president, no longer running for office. He can't. Nothing will hold him back from going all in, pushing all his chips into the middle of the table to make this happen. In his mind, he wants to be remembered as the greatest U.S. president. And doing this, building the Third Temple, will make him just that, at least in his own mind. This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters, and Trump and the temple aren't all we're talking about today. We also have a very special announcement about halfway through the video. Be sure you listen for it. Now, Trump has something else going for him this time around that he didn't have the first time around. And that is, I think, the will of God himself. Nothing happens of this magnitude scripturally without the permission of God the Father. God has prophesied that when the time is right, either a temple of some sort or a temple accommodation will appear on the Temple Mount. A temple, use of the existing Dome of the Rock, or possibly just a tabernacle, but something has to appear there. Is 2025 that time? Well, we can't say for sure. We aren't prophets on this channel. However, prophecy certainly seems to be aligning. On the Feast of Trumpets 2024, it appears with what we believe to be 95% probability that the 70th week of Daniel, or the tribulation, began with the covenant with the many being approved and enforcement of that covenant. If the tribulation truly has started, the temple then has to be less than 3.5 years away. Now, if you're new to this idea that the tribulation has actually already started with a crazy 95% probability, you're probably stunned, saying, I didn't see the Antichrist make a covenant with many, with Israel yet. And you'd be correct, because that isn't what happened, nor is it what the Bible says happens. Our English translations of Daniel 9:27, where that event is found, are mistaken. In this popular other video on this channel, and the link will be at the end of this video, we discuss how numerous experts in Hebrew, including Emmanuel Tov, the greatest expert on ancient Hebrew in the whole world, show the verse actually says, he, being the Antichrist, will cause to strengthen or enforce a covenant with the Gentiles and Israel for 7 years. That covenant is the greatest secular covenant of all time. We believe it is the pact for the future, which grants the United Nations and the World Court unprecedented powers over the nations. The enforcement began on the very first day of the Hebrew year, the first of the 7 years, on the Feast of Trumpets. On that day, a 90-nation alliance was formed to use the pact, to enforce the pact, the covenant, to create a two-state solution in Israel. They'll continue to enforce this for an entire period of 7 years until Jesus returns and puts an end to it. And yes, behind the scenes is the Antichrist, causing all this to happen. That's why you haven't seen him. He's behind the scenes. He isn't revealed until the midpoint when he sits in the temple of God, just like it says in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. So why do we say there's 95% possibility? Because the enforcement on Israel is not yet complete. A two-state solution and Temple Mount sacrifices have yet to be started. So it's only in process. And that, we believe, is where Trump may enter the picture. Once the Middle East peace plan is authorized and Israel is divided in fulfillment of Joel 3:2, then we can say that the tribulation has started with 99% assurance. When those Temple Mount sacrifices are ended, however, and the Antichrist sits in the temple to declare himself God, that's a one-of-a-kind sign. There's no doubt at that point, and then we can say it's 100%. And that will fulfill the second half of Daniel 9:27. But the bottom line is, it appears, this is the time when the division of Israel and the building of a temple will happen according to the most important timeline, God's timeline. And that's where Trump finds himself. But this remains to be seen. We aren't all the way there yet. However, if we are in the first year, which is a year of false peace, then those plans almost assuredly must happen within the next year. But as we said, Trump has more going for him this time than he had in his first administration. As you can see, Trump has now gained some powerful allies that he just didn't have that first time around. He has the power of the United Nations Pact for the future, the power of the World Court, the one that just issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, and a 90-nation alliance attempting to enforce that covenant on Israel. So that is the first obstacle that has already been overcome. Trump has nearly the entire world on his side trying to force a Middle East peace plan. And within the last month, Trump has lost some opponents to Middle East peace. The first step toward the temple. The leaders of the Hammis, like Yahya Sinwar, and the Hezis have been killed. These leaders used to oppose the idea of a divided Israel. They wanted Israel completely removed from the map and eradicated so they could have all the land. But without these leaders, there's really no one to oppose the peace other than Israel. So Trump will enter office without one major opponent. And it is a lot easier to negotiate with one party, like just Israel, than with two, Israel and the Hammis. Now, like we said, all these things are leading to a peace plan, and that has to be the first step. Before we can build a temple, peace has to come before the temple, or we would be in the middle of World War III. Now, before we get to the actual building of a temple, I want to make a very big announcement. And that announcement is that we have completed a new book, something called The Last Seal. It's different than any other Nelson Walters book. It is a fictional account of a group of Christians who go through the tribulation. And it's very different from anything like Left Behind or other books of his genre. And there are many reasons for that. But the main reason is, you might be saying, hey, you're saying we might be in the tribulation. Well, what do I do? Well, it's one thing for me to just tell you what to do. It's another thing to have a book like this that shows you what a group of Christians are doing step by step through the tribulation. It's going to be really exciting. I mean, it is really a dramatic story, action-packed. And on top of that, we're planning to hopefully make a video novel that will go through this chapter by chapter and show you on this channel what that will be like. Right now, we're soliciting AI artists who know how to create AI images with consistent characters that remain the same from scene to scene to scene. If you're one of those people who know how to do that specific skill, email me, and my email will be down in the description, and let me know about that. Please only use that email if you're one of those asking to help us with this project. Now, let's get back to Trump and his building of the temple. If you remember, we were talking about things that would help him create a peace plan so that he can go forward and then build a temple. Trump can also reconnect with a powerful ally that assisted him in his first attempt to bring peace to the region, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Even in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, MBS has been the one driving force toward Middle East peace and toward a Middle East peace plan. He is the one who set up the 90-nation alliance as well. His close relationship with Jared Kushner, Trump's former senior advisor and son-in-law, facilitated all the discussions on that plan. And although Saudi Arabia didn't sign the Abraham Accords yet, it's likely they will if a two-state solution is agreed on. And MBS also has this vested interest in having a Jewish presence on the Temple Mount. What, you say? You've got to be kidding. He's in favor of that? Yes, he is. And there's a reason, and we'll give you that in just a second. But how does the third temple enter the picture? I mean, that's what this is really about, right? We know Trump secretly desires to be the builder of the third temple for egotistical reasons. And in Israel are many sects that support this temple as well. The religious Zionists, the Orthodox, and even many Hasidic Jews. Even the nominally religious Jews, who make up the majority of the Jews in Israel, would probably love to see normalization of a Temple Mount, which is a spark to all sorts of Middle East conflict. Solve the Temple Mount problem, and you solve the Middle East in many other ways, most of them say. So making a Jewish presence on the Temple Mount will be part of a peace plan. If this was agreed to by the nations of Islam, it would be welcomed by Israel too, and would be a crucial component of peace. Now, the resumption of sacrifices and the building of the temple seem perfect tokens to be traded by the Islamists to Israel to allow the two-state solution. The Islamists get land, Israel gets peace, and the right to sacrifice and build a temple. Not only that, but Saudi Arabia is joining the Abraham Accords, and the placement of a United Nations security force would both protect the peace. If Israel gets these type of concessions, it's a whole lot more likely they will consent to the dividing of their land. Now, why would MBS also favor a Jewish presence on the Temple Mount? We said that before, and you were probably, mind was exploding, saying, how could that be? Well, there are three most holy sites in Islam: Medina, Mecca, and Jerusalem. Two of them are in Saudi Arabia, where MBS will soon rule, and one isn't. Doesn't that tell you something? MBS wants to downplay Jerusalem, where he doesn't rule, and promote the Saudi Arabian sites where he does rule. In fact, he has sponsored scholarly articles in Islam that state that the Prophet Muhammad's visit to heaven on a donkey that they claim happened in Jerusalem actually took place in, big surprise here, Saudi Arabia, not Jerusalem. MBS would love nothing more than to have the Temple Mount shared with Israel to downplay Jerusalem and promote Saudi Arabia. So everything seems to be aligning in 2025 for the two-state solution and the beginning of a temple or temple accommodation like the Dome of the Rock. Prophecy, Trump's desire for glory, MBS, the Pact for the Future, the World Court, and Netanyahu's arrest warrant, and the 90-nation alliance to force all this to happen. And as we said earlier, the only reason that Christians aren't seeing this is the mistranslation of the first half of Daniel 9:27, the one that has believers looking for the Antichrist to make a covenant with Israel, instead of being behind the scenes and enforcing a pre-existing covenant. Click right here to keep watching and discover what a dozen experts on the Old Testament and the Hebrew language have to say about that verse, and be amazed. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.